Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Good Insights podcast from the Good Project. This is Danny Mucinskas. I'm a senior project manager at the Good Project. And today I'm excited to have three wonderful colleagues join me for a conversation about their work with Education for Good, an organization in Vietnam that is doing amazing work with young people to help them think about and make social change. They have also used some ideas from the Good Project in this pursuit. Ken's also been involved in seeking to found a United World College in Vietnam. United World Colleges, or UWC, is a movement of schools around the world that has a mission to make education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. Along with my team members Shelby Clark and Sarah Magana, I had the privilege of doing a multi-year research project with UWC to look at their educational mission and speak with their students and alumni about the short and long-term impacts of their experiences. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Sam, Quang, and Chao to the show to talk about their work and their visions for education that can help learners to do good in the world. So before we dive in, I want to give a little more background about each one of you and give you the chance to say hello. So I will introduce Sam first. Sam Jeong is the founder of Education for Good, an organization based in Vietnam that nurtures purpose-driven leadership among youth. He is an educator and social entrepreneur with over a decade of experience across the US and Asia, with a focus on equity and belonging in his experience with students. He has served as an admissions officer, university counselor, and elementary school teacher in several countries. He is originally from South Korea and Washington State and holds a BA from Williams College and an MA in independent school leadership from Columbia. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Danny. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next, I'll introduce Quang Lei, who was among the first people to join Sam at Doing Good. He brings extensive experience in student support, relationship building, engagement, and mentorship with students, and he has worked across diverse and international educational settings to empower students to thrive and grow. His educational philosophy emphasizes lifelong learning and long-term development in physical and emotional well-being. Quang graduated from the University of Auckland with a BA in Education and Employment Relations and Organization Studies. Welcome.
Hi, Danny. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Excited for our conversation.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And then last but not least, Chau Doan is co-manager of Doing Good, where she is responsible for program development and international expansion. With her passion for education shaped by her university experience and desire to give back to community, Chao has channeled her passion into working with youth organizations to empower young minds. She is guided by the philosophy it takes a village to raise a child, recognizing that education extends beyond a focus on knowledge to include environmental and interpersonal connections. She has a BA in business management. Chao, so excited to have you with us as well.
Hi, Danny. Yeah, thank you for such a beautiful introductions for us three, and very excited to start the conversation.
Absolutely. So we'd just like to start if you can tell us a little bit about what spurred you to launch your UWC-inspired Vietnam campus project and how it became Education for Good.
Of course. So my relationship essentially with the UWC movement started with me taking on a position at UWC Changshu, China back in 2017, so close to a decade ago, as one of its founding university counselors. And I got to know about UWC when I was working in admissions at Dartmouth, when one of my essentially favorite applications of that entire season came from the first graduating class, one of the first graduating students at UWC Changshu. And it was a Malaysian student. And I could go on and on about his application, but essentially I was just struck by how kind and caring he was about his roommates, about his teammates in a way that I had not experienced high school. And I essentially remember asking myself, what is this magic high school where students get to be kind and caring and lift each other up? I want to work at this high school. And they were hiring essentially university counselors, and was so lucky to receive an offer and move to China and work with students from, I think we had 110 different nations. And I got to essentially help curate student stories as a university counselor. That's how my first foray into UWC began. But I moved to Vietnam in 2020 when my students and my colleagues, but I was yearning, I think, for a more cosmopolitan experience. I didn't have a family, and I think a UWC campus is an ideal place to perhaps raise a kid. You have essentially free babysitters sort of out the door, but it wasn't quite in my context. So I decided to stay in Asia because my parents are based in Korea and look at more experiences in the university counseling field somewhere in Asia. And there was an opening at an international school in Ho Chi Minh City called Saigon South International School, just a day independent, not-for-profit international school. And I took the job and I moved in 2020 during the thick of COVID in August. And I knew that I wanted to stay somehow involved with the UWC movement. So I started volunteering for the UWC Vietnam's scholarship committee, national committee, that helps select the local scholarship students in Vietnam to go abroad to one of the 18 UWCs around the world. And it was a different set of students, of course, all Vietnamese students, not only coming from Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, but also in the 63 provinces, very rich provinces that in terms of history and culture and nature that Vietnam has to offer. But the application itself was so competitive, I realized. We had around 400 applications that year for just 10 spots for students. And it was honestly probably the most difficult admissions process that I went through and have gone through, honestly, in my career. And the students that I was meeting just reminded me a whole lot of my students from China. These were also kind and engaged, uplifting students who cared about the community, who were hungry for opportunities, who also had essentially proclivity for action. They saw something in the world, they wanted to do something about it. But I didn't like saying essentially no to 390 students. And I think it was always in my mind of how do we expand access and opportunities to the students who are just as deserving, but don't go through this very rigorous admissions process. So the UWC inspired Vietnam Campus Project really started 2 years ago when I came back to Vietnam after some time away, after my adult gap year, as I call it, which is a 30th birthday gift that I gave to myself after COVID. When I was feeling a little bit burnt out, I went back to the States for a few months, also traveled around in Europe. And honestly, my highlights were meeting up with my former students from UWC China, who are now just graduating from university into their first career, and me realizing that the 2 years, the 3 years that they had at UWC were still transformative for my students. And they were no longer 16 or 17, but clearly this experience that they had as teenagers of being able to celebrate differences, being able to hone a sense of idealism it still rang true to many of my students, and I really saw them live it. I came back to Vietnam to participate in one of these selection events again. It was also, yeah, a very difficult, challenging experience, just saying no to so many capable students. And this is when I said, oh, has there ever been a campus project in Vietnam? Oh, no. Can I have an email? And I started emailing folks, and that's how the project came to be. To quickly answer Education for Good, we have a US-based non-for-profit, a 501c3 setup called VNUWC. And Education for Good is our non-for-profit subsidiary company in Vietnam. And when it came to picking this particular name, I just thought back to my conversations at the dinner table with my dad, who would ask us, who are you studying for? Why are you studying? And my dad called these dinner table talks. I thought it was so boring when I was growing up. But thinking back to those kind of conversations, I think my answer has always been, yeah, we study for others. We study to make good in the world for other people. So it kind of naturally came to me as we were discussing, oh, what should we call the VNUWC project? Education for Good is a name that I suggested for the team. It stuck. It had a good ring to it. And we've been off to the races for the past 2 years.
Thank you so much, Sam, for that walk through Education for Good's history and what drew you to this work. And obviously, I like the name Education for Good as somebody who's at the Good Project as well. I feel like there's some similarity there and a similar ring to what we're trying to achieve. And I definitely resonate with some of what you shared. Hearing from UWC students and alums in the work that I did about how impactful the experience at UWC was and remains for them even years later. And so I definitely can appreciate that. I know that since you founded Education for Good, the three of you have been involved in developing a short course program that ran in the summer for young people, giving them the chance to engage in a 2 week, I think, experience where they thought about what it looks like to do social good and to really be interacting and engaging with community with the aim of having a positive impact. And I would love to hear just a little bit more about that experience, what it looked like for students, and what you've seen as the impact. And I know you also even used some of the ideas of the 3 E's that the Good Project talks about in our framework of good work to be considering what it looks like for students to be engaging in social good. So, would you be able to talk about that a little bit more? What did that look like for students on the ground?
Yeah, sure. I will give you a picture of what happened last year. So, Doing Good was a hybrid program, and it actually still is. And we had 5 online days followed by a 10 offline days where students get to meet each other in Bình Định and get to meet like local partners in Bình Định, which is a province located in central Vietnam. And we call these 10 days of offline program in-person component. So in the first 5 days of online component, we introduced the concepts of 3 E's, excellence, ethics, engagement, and 3 M's, mentors, models. And we also introduced like rings of responsibilities and the concept of value and so on. And in those workshops, we ask a student question like, what do you think good work is? What do you think work is? And who is someone you looked up to? And along the way, we also allow them to find their values through activities such as the meaning map, where they identify the theme of their life, what bring them joy, what rejuvenate them. And so there are introducing concepts and then workshops along the way, but there's always like an underlying theme of self-reflection throughout all of the activities. So students get to reflect on what they think good work is, and they also hear their peer reflections on good work. So in these 5 days of online component, they get to have the idea of how they see good work and how good work is defined differently among their peers in their own umbrella group. And then they move on to the 10 days of offline component. And here we took them out to meet local partners, the people in Minden that we believe represent certain level of good work. And we let them explore what good work is in a region that some of them never set foot on. And reflection is also the underlying theme of all of the field trips and activities. After the field trip, we asked questions like, how is excellent ethics engagement reflected in the people that you've just met and their work? And we push them to also have more critical comments and sharing, such as, let's say, for example, a question of, when it comes to excellence, what areas in this work can be improved? And you mentioned that this place is ethical, but for which target audience, for which ring of responsibility, and for a different audience, do you think it's still ethical? So after each field trip, there are still very critical reflection. And for the 5 days of online component, they get to understand their own definition of good work and their umbrella group's definition of good work, right? And for the 10 days of offline component, the in-person one, they get to understand how diverse good work can be actualized and expressed in different regions of the world and how complex it is as they have critical reflection on it. And as they grasp the nuance and the complexity of good work, as well as the different manifestations of good work, we ended the whole program with an activity called the Maps of Possibility, which was inspired by the ODC plan from Stanford Design School. And here they think of different possibilities of being, living, and doing good work. So just to sum up everything, I think there was one question in the Good Projects curriculum that said, I used to think good work is ... and now I think good work is ... And I feel like after the 2.5-week program, they have a clearer answer to that kind of question. And they have an updated perspective and definition of what good work is. And with that, I feel like they have been more confident to start their own doing good journey, because they know that there are so many different possibilities out there. And even when I haven't seen it, I can still set my foot on it and waiting for possibilities to unfold themselves. And yeah, I think that's what I feel so beautiful about the program and how it transformed the students. Yeah. And that was last year. This year, we have several upgrades. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like a really powerful learning experience. And like students or participants in this program got to ask some really deep questions about what good work means to them and what it actually looks like in action through all of this, which is really, I think, crucial to being an active participant in the world and being a global citizen in so many ways. Props to the three of you for giving students the learning opportunity to be going through all of this. I'm wondering, you talked at the end a little bit about giving students the chance to actually be thinking about what their different pathways and potential futures could look like. And are there particularly powerful stories or follow-ups that you have seen from your learners as they've gone on to next steps or maybe put their ideas into action in certain ways? What have you seen from your learners that shows that they've taken something away from this experience?
Yeah, I can share one story, and then Quang, I think you have several stories to share. When we did Maps of Possibilities activity, I think in that activity, we were assigned to have one-on-one coaching sessions with our students, because that is when we understand their views in life in the clearest way, I think. And then there's this one female student who is very passionate in making changes in the world. And she is very active, she is very assertive, and she has this aura in her. So when she walks in the room, you can feel the room is brightened. So she has that kind of charisma. And so when I asked about, okay, what is your current path? Of course, she said, oh, I want to empower women. I want to make women feel more confident in themselves. And that's what she embodied as well. And then we also moved on to another different possibility of living. I asked her if this first life path did not exist, then what would you do? And then she was like, oh yeah, I will still do something for women because I believe that's like the way to go. And I really like the image of girl boss. I don't know if you know that term, but like very
Yes, yeah.
powerful women out there. And then she mentioned, I don't like to be constrained in the social expectations of how women should behave. And so that was my light bulb moment. And I asked her, oh, so you don't like to be constrained by the certain societal expectations of female figures. What about the constraint of being a girl boss? Do you feel like you're locked in that image? And then she was like, huh, that's very interesting. And then she spent like 5 minutes sitting in silence and then just having her contemplative moments about it. And I think that was a very transformative moment for both of us when we realized that, oh, this person or this self who embody what I really value, what I really like and embody can also be influenced by certain kind of image. And so that's when I think about the concept of doing good work and how heavily we are to be influenced by what the society we live in and the community we engage ourselves in.
Yeah, when I think of these questions, there are many stories that I can think of, and I think that there's so many stories to share. One of the common points about the stories of the students after the program that I see is there are three things that stand out to me. Is first is their kindness, thoughtfulness, and curiosity. And when I talk about kindness, is about how they have become more emotionally mature and mindful to themselves, but also to those around them. There's one student during our program who talks about how he can embrace or learn how to embrace vulnerability and how does that link with masculinity. And through this experience, how he wants to share about this learning experience with his peers in his home country. And that sticks with me. There are other students who, after the program, went back to their home neighborhood or local community and asked, what could they do to add values to their community here? To be mindful of that process, not just to impose on what they think is right and correct on their work that they want to do, but also to do so with the input of the people they want to support or work with, be it other younger folks, younger students in their community, or be it the community that they want to work with. For example, we have one student in our program who actually keep engaging with one of the local partners that we work with to support the disabled community in Binden, and to do so mindfully and thoughtfully of the people they are working with. And the third point is curiosity, is about circling back to the activities that you mentioned earlier, is about the students explore possibilities of themselves, including those possibilities they might have not had thought of before or might have not had the full confidence to believe in it, and to keep exploring about the possibilities about themselves. There's one student who told us that Vietnam is one of the, if I'm not mistaken, is the first country that he visited outside of his home country. And because of this experience, it inspired him to go and travel more, which he actually did months after the program. And it just opens up his eyes and perspectives on like, oh, there's more out there, so that he can travel and explore. But also throughout the process to think back about his home country and his hometown to see what he could do. So that's power of going outside, but also going inside themselves as well. Is really powerful and what stuck with me. And there are many, many stories that I can go into details, but those are the common points about them that I remember.
Yeah, these are really inspiring examples and stories about the impact of this program for your learners. And Chao, I know you mentioned that You made some changes and tweaks since the first time it was run. I'm wondering about what you all felt maybe was challenging about running this kind of program. Getting students to do good is something that I think many of us working in education would like to see and are really trying to encourage in young people. But it's difficult and it can be really challenging to explain what doing good means and to motivate people to do good in the world in certain ways. And I'm just wondering, what did you all encounter as maybe the challenges of running this kind of program with this particular focus? What did you tweak for maybe the second run of it? And what advice would you have for other people who want to be doing similar types of work or types of programs in the world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think I will answer the challenge, or I don't think I view it as a challenge, but it's more like a very fun puzzle to solve. Yeah. So previously, as I mentioned, in the 5 days of online component, we walked them through the theory and the concepts. And I think that somehow transport them back to the time when there was pandemic and they had to sit at home and join Zoom. So we did conduct a small group interview with several of our alumni, and they were like, Miss Chao, I don't want to study like online this way. I want the lessons to be more engaging. And so one of the puzzle to solve is how to walk them through the theory and concepts without have them feeling like they're learning the theory and concepts, because there are students flying over to Vietnam from across the world, right? And I don't want them to have the feeling like, oh, you're flying that far and now you still have to experience what you can also experience back in your home country, in your own classroom. So this year, one of the puzzles is how to make it more experiential and more engaging. So what we do, and this is the suggestions from our alumni in the interview, is that we move the theory part to the offline component. And during the online component, we have a mini challenge or the bingo challenge for them to list out what the good work that they can do in their home country. And then all of them will just work in group, and day by day, they will just take small actions to do good work. And then they will have some reflection on it. So yeah, that's one change, moving the theory part to the offline part, and then conduct workshops to make it more interactive and engaging. So that was our change in the online part. For the in-person component, last year, I think the structure was futures, reflection, and presentation if needed. And so personally, I find it quite repetitive. And when we structure in that way, there's no longer a surprise element for the students. And I also feel like the learning experience was quite passive, where they were taken to like a local partner. We bring the local partner to them, and then we ask them questions to reflect. They still added their parts in it, but I still feel like the act of doing good, it wasn't very active. It wasn't come from their intrinsic motivation. And furthermore, I also realized that we were very good at providing them the examples of good workers, but we haven't really provided them the tools to do good work. There are some certain workshops, like I mentioned, like the meaning map. We had workshop on storytelling. We have workshops on maps of possibilities, and it contributed a lot to their skills of doing good. But I feel like there can be more skill to be taught. So just to give you a snippets of this year curriculum, for the in-person component on the theme of ethics, we're planning to teach them the concept called response ability. So it means like just your ability to respond to those who facing problems, who undergoing like suffer, or who just needing help. And how do we respond to them correctly? Because doing good is about service learning, right? And do we respond in a way that we, impose like our savior complex on them, or do we respond in the way that truly nurture them? So there will be workshop on meaningful empowerment for them, so that when they do good work, or when they take action on their service learning, is actually meaningful, and then they have the set of tools to do it in a way. So to sum up, I think for the online component, the theory will be removed and we'll put it in the offline component. And with that, we will conduct more interactive workshops that will provide students the tools to do good work based on the concepts of 3Es. And yeah, there will still be field trips. Students will still get to see like good workers in Binden. But yeah, it will be more interactive and more practical this year.
That's great. Thank you for walking through some of the changes that you all are thinking about. And I really like the focus in particular on experiential learning and active learning for participants, which is so important. I'm wondering if this is a question for any of you. Are there other principles to experiential learning or active learning that you think would be useful to share with others who might, again, be thinking about similar types of programs or doing similar types of work with learners? What else do you think is important to include or design into a learning experience like the ones that you all have created?
One of the things that I learned is that for experiential learning to work, then first, body movement is very important. So find ways to incorporate physical movement into your own activities. I think, give you an example will make it a little bit clearer. So in the Good Projects curriculum, we have the activity about value sort, where you have different cards of values, and then student will sort out what are the values that are important for them. With experiential learning, we can do something like, and this is the suggestions from one of our ex-facilitators last year, let them just carry a backpack of a lot of items, and each of the items represent one of their values. And then they have to carry that heavy backpack like for, let's say, 1 hour. And then until then, they have to decide to drop some of the items, right? And that is where the struggle comes in, because what to drop, what to keep. I cannot carry all of this kind of items / value. So yeah, so how can we incorporate physical movement, physical actions, and also certain types of analogy? I think that is some very important elements of experiential learning.
Just to add a little bit on that, the sort of learning cycle of an experiential learner is they have to first experience something, right? Physically, as Chau said, or conceptually, right? And then they have to reflect upon that experience that they just went through, like the carrying this heavy backpack or going to a museum in an immersive experience. Then there's a conceptualization of, okay, what are some things in my life that I can apply whatever principles that I just reflected about based upon that experience. And then there's an experimentation phase, right? Where you experiment an idea or a case study and the cycle repeats itself. And this experience part, because we are in a rather secluded location, the students and the facilitators are always in community with each other because it's a residential program. I think there's a lot of opportunities for, new ways for the core team and the facilitators alike as they're co-designing the experiential component to bring to the students, to bring to the participants. So last year was 1.0. This year, as you can clearly tell, there's new ways of engagement that's being chatted about already 3-4 months before the program even begins, and really excited for what's to come.
And I can follow up on that, not just about the experiential factor in it, but I think in your original question, Danny, is about similar education programs, about the concept of doing good. I think there are 3 things that I think would be very important to share. First is values and culture. Second, designing the program, both operations and learning activities. And third is building a team. So for values and culture, I think for these type of programs, for both student and staff, it's all about safety. And when I talk about safety, I mean emotional safety, psychological and physical safety if you are having in-person programs. It's all about creating a safe space for students to engage with the learning materials, explore the perspectives, learn things, and make meaningful memories. that will last with them a long time. I think that is one of the very key factors that we focus on, we prioritize, and I think it would be very helpful for others who are thinking of designing similar programs to be mindful of as well. Second, designing the program, what I learned from last year, for me, I get involved in both cycles of the program last year and this year. And what I learned is for the organizing team to be crystal clear on the vision, on the expectation and the process, and be ready to pivot along the way. Because during the designing process, there are things that you will learn and unlearn. So it's very important to be flexible along the way as well, and to be mindful of your blind spots. And by saying this, I mean to be proactive in getting input from your team, your students, or if this is the first round that you're doing it, to get input from your potential students. Get them involved in the process of creating this experience, because that will ensure you are on track of delivering a program that meets the student needs and expectations. And third is building a team. I think that is the most important thing before everything, is to get the right people on board who share the same vision, who can add great values to the team, and to bring in different strengths and skill sets that are complementary to each other. And then the process will follow. There's this saying that I read somewhere that really, really stuck with me is, if you're lucky enough to excel at meaningful work you enjoy, you're very, very fortunate. But if you do meaningful work you enjoy with the people you love working with, that's the jackpot. Yeah, that's one of the most amazing feelings that you can experience in life. And I experienced that last year. And we aim to experience that again this year as well by forming such a great team with different skill set, with dedication to the student learning experience, and to have that great working experience with each other for the students. So that's what I would share about designing similar programs like this: values, building a team, and get student in the process.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for these rich answers and insights into what it's taken to design an impactful program like this for students and learners. I think there's so much that you've hit upon, the team aspect of it, the willingness to engage with flexibility and pivoting, the ability to cultivate a sense of safety for learners in order for them to have that ability to experiment and have experiences and really learn from them in certain ways, I think is also important and such a rich way to be thinking about this program. A question I have for all of you, based on the work that my colleagues and I did with UWC several years ago, is that we were really curious in that research to learn how people thought about what it meant to make an impact on the world and how they conceptualize that question. And so we would ask in our interviews and in our surveys, what does making a difference mean to you? What does it look like to actually have an impact on the world? Are there certain ways that you can have an impact that are more, for lack of a better word, impactful than others? And how do you weigh those kinds of decisions? So I'm wondering, for any of you, how do you hope that your learners in this program go on to make an impact in the world based on this learning experience?
Yeah, thanks for this great question. I think what we're doing right now, because we're not operating as a school, right? We're operating currently as a program in hopes that it will one day metamorphosize into a school inspired by the UWC movement. But how I think about it is, when do students actually think about what does it mean to do good work and what it means to live a good life? Questions that I personally think are just as important as your chemistry homework, right? Or maybe English literature. So I think really providing that space for students who care about thinking about this to come together and reflect, perhaps pause a little bit and recalibrate or learn new concepts about, yeah, what does it mean to do good? I think it's a really powerful experience for the students. And yeah, as a career university counselor, This is not about resume building or college prep. Although actually our students who are graduating this year did very well in the college admissions process, but I think it's honestly as a byproduct. But it's to, yeah, give students the opportunity to wrestle with these real world dilemmas, right? Of environmental responsibility, about public service, not just because it was written somewhere on a textbook, but because it was a lived experience that they witnessed and thought about. And I think that's one of the most powerful experiences that a young person can have. And as Quang said earlier, in community with each other.
Great. Quang and Chao, do you have anything you'd like to add in response to this question?
Yeah, I think is that if I'm talking with my student right now, what I would say, yes, go out there and make an impact on the world, but do so patiently. Be patient with yourself and be patient with the process. There will be challenges, failures, mistakes along the way, but it's important that you take good care of your mind, soul, and body, your well-being, so that your work can be sustainable. So that's one of the first things I would tell them. And second is don't be a bystander to the events, interests, concerns, and issues that matter to you and to those around you. Take an active role in that matter, be it spreading awareness, having conversations about it, or working on something tangible towards it. Like just do and see where it leads you. So those would be two things I would be sharing with my students if I'm talking with them right now.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if I can turn a little bit more personal with the three of you and ask you this question around values, which is something that you all have touched on and also that we talk about a lot at the Good Project, the values that motivate us in the work that we do. And I'm wondering for each of you, what do you see as the most important guiding values, or if not values, character strengths is also another term or phrase that we use from academia. What guides you in doing this work and in being involved with Education for Good?
Such a great question. I think for me personally, it's belonging, perhaps belonging in community. I think it's something that I personally did not have as a high school student. When I was a teenager, yeah, I had academically excellent friends all around me, but I didn't necessarily have friends who cared too much about being kind and making other people feel belonged. And I think I really needed that. So that word really guides me, I think, in my philosophy as an educator to make my students who sit across from me feel belonged in their own story and body, but also being able to create belonging for, yeah, in everything that we do for the students, for the group of facilitators, for my team, for the core team.
I can think of many words, but I think the first pop up in my mind is trust. Trust in your team, trust in your students and capabilities, and trust in yourself. And with trust, I think with that trust comes with optimism to focus on the possibilities and maintain a good energy among your work, among the people around you and the work you're doing. And also it gives you the power of grit to persevere and the ability to overcome the obstacles along the way as well. So for me, that would be trust in yourself and those around you.
I really like the work of the Good Project and as well as the work of doing good. I think a big part of it is because it emphasizes a lot on self-reflection. Yeah, I think just a funny story. I told my friends that, oh, hey, our team is going to recruit facilitators. So I told her like last Saturday. And then on Monday, he was like, hey, pick someone who is really good at reflecting on themselves, okay? Because when they reflect, they are very in tune with the world and they're very in tune with themselves. And I believe that will lead to good work. And at that moment, when I heard that, I felt immensely grateful for having her to put that concept into words for me. I think self-reflection is really important and it shows your response ability to the world as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I love these three elements that the three of you have picked up on: belonging, trust, and self-reflection, all so important. As a final question, I'm wondering about where Education for Good is going and what you hope for the coming summer program and also even beyond for the next year or 5 years down the road. Where do you see yourselves going and what is your hope for the future?
Yeah, thanks for that. We're expanding in a few different exciting ways. One is our Embodying Earth program, which is another UWC short course, but this particular short course is focusing on regenerative leadership and the climate crisis. In the face of the climate crisis, what can we do about it? Is our guiding question. And another initiative that we're currently working on for the end of the year is a benefits concert that we're organizing, that we're hoping to bring a youth orchestra from the United States to Hanoi to have a collaborative concert with the Vietnam Youth Orchestra, which was founded by UWC alumnus who came back to Vietnam. He's a professional cellist, but this is a side project that he's been working on as the principal conductor. And we're hoping, yeah, that it can be a benefits concert that really kickstarts some serious funding for the school. And whether it is through schools, through a school, or sort of our continued programs, I just want to see graduates of our program, whether it be Doing Good or others, I guess carry forward this sense of joyful responsibility, which is directly tied to our own mission statement of nurturing an inclusive community of change makers, joyful change makers, who embrace authenticity and grow holistically and purposefully create good in Vietnam and beyond. And we're working hard towards actualizing this campus, but we're also mindful of all of the byproducts that we're going to have along the way, whether or not this campus is realized. And we've all, I think, collectively learned a lot as a team for the past couple years. We're looking forward to more learning that's to come in the next years to come, but also, as Quang said, having trust in ourselves, in myself for what's to come in the future. And as Joe said, reflecting about the day, about the quarter, about the years, and what have been our takeaway and learnings. And do we feel safe and do we feel belonged as we do this work together in community is what'll drive us for the next 5 years and beyond.
It's amazing and a really beautiful note of both your own learnings and change making in the world to end on here as we think about everything that you all have done with your learners and with each other to create something that I think is really impactful in the world. So I just want to say thank you to Sam, to Chao, and to Quang for joining us today and for taking the time to share everything that they are doing with Education for Good in Vietnam and beyond. And I will be on the lookout for many good things on the horizon for all of you in many different ways. So thank you again for joining the podcast today.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks to you and your colleagues for spearheading the Good Project in the first place.
Thank you so much. Great to
Thank you,
collaborate.
Danny.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Danny.
Thanks so
Thanks so
much.
much.
And thanks for our listeners. All right, until next time.